Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, finance and accounting pros prepare for change and transformation. I'm your host, Tom Hood, the EVP for Business Engagement and Growth at AICPA and SEMA, largest association of professional accountants, CPAs and CGMAs in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about Leading with Significance, a new book by my friend and colleague, Joey Havens. Joining me is Joey Havens, CPA. Now, there's a whole lot about here I got to talk about. Top 30 thought leader by CPA Practice Advisor, managing partner of strategic growth for the top 50 firm HORNE, former executive partner of HORNE from 2012 to 2021, and author of the new book, Leading with Significance, How to Create a Magnetic People-First Culture, which I have read and actually like a lot. Author of 4 books, AICPA White Paper, Becoming the Firm of the Future, active in his community in Jackson, Mississippi, serves on several boards. Joey, say hello to everybody.
Well, hello there. And Tom, it's so good to see us. The most wonderful things you've ever said about me that I know about.
All right, so let's start with why. What made you write this book now, and why the title Leading with Significance?
Okay. Well, you know, when you ask a question why, that's always a big question. I'm gonna do the heavy part of that first. Is that I did feel that God was calling me to share this message. I tried to put it down and say, hey, I'm going to wait till I fully retire. I had made some notes and thought about I might write a book about culture. But God wouldn't let me rest. He said, we got to get this out there now. So that's the big why. But also, if you look around, Tom, and you know everything that's going on with the Great Resignation, the reset. I mean, there's being called everything in the world, but people are walking out with their feet because they're not finding purpose at work. They're not finding a connection. So now, I mean, I was jumping out of my skin to get this done in 2022, but the publishers and the printers couldn't pull all that together. So we're hoping for May of next year. In fact, when we get off today, I'll be reviewing the final print instructions, but now it's just so relevant. And why the title, Leading with Significance? I wish I could say, hey, I knew that from the start, but I don't know, you know, for people that have written books, they probably experienced this. I had ideas. I thought it might be called Be Better. I thought it might be called Building the Wise Firm, which is what we call our culture. But when I finished the main body of the work and you step back from it and you can see the forest, it was very clear that each and every chapter, each and every stage, the things that we learned, everything was about leading with significance, which is really based on the Christian values of caring and serving each other, and having an impact on people's lives, putting people first. And so I thought the title was very appropriate.
And I would agree with that. And by the way, Joey, what you just said reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. I think it comes from Steve Jobs, who says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backward. And that's exactly what you're saying, is by the time you started to put it down, when you started to connect those dots from the whole beginning of your journey, that leads to leading with significance. I mean, I love that. I also love the subtitle, which is How to Create a Magnetic People-First Culture, which I know you've been on that journey. We've obviously had some work in that with you guys, and it's been fascinating to watch that journey that you were on and took. So kudos. And this is the playbook.
Well,
right? That's the playbook.
Yeah, you know, and I thank you for that. I mean, you understated the role you played. You had a big part in some of those mountains we had to climb, and certainly on the business model side. But the book is focused on culture. But I'll say this, I think everybody's journey is unique. There's a common starting point probably, but there's a lot of learnings and wisdom, and I share that in the back of each chapter. But I do believe this. I believe each and every organization and leadership team finds their way in a very unique way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I love your storytelling style, obviously having known you and interviewed you on a couple other things. So I love your rotting meat story that you opened with. So you got to tell us a little bit of that. You won't give away too much by telling that story.
All right. 2 pounds of rotting hamburger meat I use in the very first chapter to relate to what we call today good culture. And I'll explain to you why. But when I was, and do this really short, when I was 15 years old, I'd saved my money to buy my first car, and Daddy took me to Memphis, and we found this Ford Falcon with the stick shift on the steering wheel for $300. I can tell you how long ago that was. And man, this was my independence. This was everything to me. And so, I get back and I go to this weekend picnic and my buddies and all that. But on Monday morning after that weekend, my car started to stink. And so I cleaned it out from top to bottom, did everything. The next day and the next day, it just got worse. And so I keep cleaning it. And finally, I'm hanging air fresheners. I'm driving around with the windows down. And I began to tell myself it's getting better. But every time a buddy would get in the car with me, they would say, "Oh my gosh, what is that smell in your car?" And so I had a flat. And when I went back there to change the tire and I pulled the tire out of the wheel well that sat down in the bottom of the trunk, there was a little paper bag tag just barely sticking out. When I pulled that out, there was 2 pounds of rotting hamburger meat that had fallen down in there from the picnic. And so when I think about that, and obviously at the time I just learned what rotting hamburger meat will do to your car. But later in life, as I got to looking at culture and I got to looking where HORNE was in 2011, we had good culture. We had a good reputation. We felt good about ourselves. We kept telling ourselves, we got good culture, but it was real inconsistent. We were allowing too many different things, and good culture over time starts to reek and it deteriorates and it starts to smell. And that's the message for all of us is good culture is not good enough today, and good culture smells. That's why people are walking out. That's why we're losing so many of our stars.
Yeah, which gets back to your whole mantra of be better, which hashtag be better is one of the classic Joey trademarks. So, but it's a great reflective way to say we got to be thinking about this stuff, right? No matter how good we think we have it, we all do think we have good cultures. We all try. But you're right. They don't quite always make it to that level that it should be. And thank you for writing this story about how we can make it even better. All right, let's talk about this. How did you, because one of the big things that always shows up in firms especially is alignment and buy-in from the partners and everybody else. And sometimes they call it herding cats. But how did you create, maintain alignment and firm buy-in from your partners along the journey? And then tell us a little bit about what lessons you learned and what we can benefit from.
Alignment, yeah, it's that's probably one reason that it took 57,000 words and 200 pages. There was a lot of lessons learned in alignment from the partners all the way through, and certainly starting with me. But we did get a jump start in that we weren't in the best spot in 2011 with our partner group from a trust standpoint. And when we laid out the vision for the wise firm culture, and we made a comparison to a foolish firm and a wise firm and what those characteristics look like. And it started with the foundation of the foolish firm being me and self-interest, and the foundation of the wise firm being we and service. And it was that compelling vision that the partners actually voted unanimously. That's who we want to be. We know we're not there today. We want to aspire to be there. And it is a daily journey. And so that compelling vision and all the buy-in initially, and then the board said, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be our top priority. And so we began to align with that. And it takes a leadership team. No one individual can lead culture change. But now every team member can be a catalyst for that change. Mm-hmm. But it does take a team, and it takes a lot of people early on. The other thing that we did that was very impactful is that we changed our performance evaluation system for partners to where it was very balanced. It not only included the financial aspects of profitability, but it included growing our business, growing our people. It included leadership and how are you leading, and in what ways you're leading, what are your leadership skills. And then even our Wise Firm culture had a section where are you, I'll call it firm first mindset.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's something that even to this day, when we do strategic plan with firms, we often talk about, are you one firm, right? And we usually rank it on a 1 to 10 versus an amalgamation of practices, which often is where large firms come from, right? One became two, and then they merged in a couple more, and they grew a little bit, and then next thing you know, but they're all focused on their own little niches. So to your point, when you get everybody laser focused on one thing, powerful and not easy to do, and yet you managed to do that again.
Well, it's very powerful, but we all know this in change management. People are for it until they understand what changes on their plate.
That is very true. So just real quick, any like resistance or any of those things, how did you overcome any of that? Is there any like quick stories about any of that stuff?
Well, I think when you really get serious about a journey where you're going to prioritize people, there will be leaders that either don't buy into that or don't get on board. And so they're hard discussions. Thankfully, our board said, no, this is who we're going to be. And we had those hard discussions, and some people elected to go a different way, but one of the things we're very blessed in that we actually went down in the number of partners the first 24 months, but the business grew 20% organically. And so then you had even more buy-in from the ones that said, yes, this is the right direction. So a little luck never hurts. I love a little luck. And in the book, I talk about a lot of coincidences throughout. But when I come to the conclusion, that's one of the things that we've learned is certainly God and faith and culture come together when you get something magnetic going.
Yep, that is very cool. All right, let's talk a little bit about how you got here, because I've always been a fan of your blog post. So what role did social media play in writing this book? You've been a prolific blogger. I know you've been on Twitter. How did all that help you or move this along?
Well, let's hope that it's going to have an impact going forward. I really don't see a connection with the generation of writing the book, or there's really very few, if any, of the blog stories in the book. Okay. There's other stories, as you know, some personal and some family ones that just help us relate to changing our mindsets and doing things like that. It's a little humor along the way. But social media really didn't play a big role. Now, I think it's going to play a huge role going forward. Well, I was so excited when you reached out to me to do this. I mean, thank you, because I do want to get the message out. The book is really all about helping others see that it's a challenge, it's hard, it's pulling back the curtains to see the human emotions and what it takes to do that, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. There's no question that that'll be a way to help get the message out about this book, and certainly we'll do what we can to help you, because I think it's a good book, and it's right for these times that we're in, because I think we need more purpose in this profession and in how we're all leading in our organizations, because it's what the young people, the next generation, they care about it. They get it really well.
Absolutely. They start there.
They start there. Exactly right. And if you can't answer those questions, they probably aren't going to come to work for you. And if you don't walk the talk, they aren't going to stay working with you, right? That's what we definitely see from that standpoint. Now, all right, so let's get to the final words of advice for our audience. How should we all lead with significance?
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is be intentional, because so much of a good culture gets away from where we see it in our minds and the way we tell ourselves, is because we have allowed behaviors that are not aligned with our core values. They're not aligned with who we say we are. So be intentional. And the starting point for everyone, I start every day this way, is your good culture is not good enough. And look, it just takes one reflection to really realize it's not, because nearly every firm is seeing turnover that's too high to have the right client experience. And they're seeing stars leave every year that they could have used to grow the business. And my final word, and I think this is what makes people first cultures distinctive, is when the leadership team is bold enough to choose to trust in the good in people. That's at the core of it. Trust in the good in people. The more rules you have, Tom, the less you are trusting people.
You are so right, Joey, on that notion, right? And it is a lot about that idea of trust. And there's been books written about that, right? Covey, The Speed of Trust. You just go, there's just tons of those pieces so I love that, be intentional. I like the idea of the sneaking hamburger, right? Good culture is not good enough. And every day you have to say, to your point, how can we be better? #BeBetter, which you've been using for quite a while. And then the trust factor is another big one, right? We layer on all these systems of, controls and everything else for our people. But you're right. If you trust them, they'll do some amazing things for you from that standpoint. So yeah, good stuff. All right. Now because you're an author now, this is you've written some other things before, but this one I think is that's the sum, right? That's definitely the sum of
that's certainly the crown jewel. Yes,
exactly. So any other books or what do you recommend to our audience? Because I know we're all looking for, the next inspirational pieces that we should look at. Any other recommendations that you might have for this group? Because I know you're also a prolific reader and study these things.
Yes, I read lots and lots of things, and it all depends on where somebody is in their journey. I think today, if I had to recommend one book, because people are searching so much for connecting to a purpose, they're really striving to find meaning in what they're doing. I'm going to go to one of two authors. I guess I'm going to go two ways here. John O'Leary, in his book On Fire, is so incredible. I gave it to my parents. I gave it to my kids. And then John Gordon just does a tremendous job in his positive energy, the energy bus, just some fun reads, some great reads. So those two, I definitely would put high on the list.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have those little recommendations, although I put them after this one. So maybe with that one. And And Joey, it's always great to catch up to you. And I'm so excited for you and this book. It's very cool to see you doing that. And I think you're going to make an impact, always have, but you're going to make an even bigger impact in the profession. So with that, thank you. And we'll probably be having you back here again sometime in the near future. By the way, for me, I loved your bottom three, three thoughts at the end there. Be intentional. Good culture is never good enough. And trust the good in people. I think powerful messages to sum up how you think and what really that's about being significant, by the way. You can follow
Yes.
you can follow Joey on Twitter at Joey Havens CPA, all one word. Website www.joeyhavens.com. And LinkedIn, just look him up, Joey Havens, and connect to him on LinkedIn. He's out there. He's available to do that. So with that, I want to thank you for joining me, and for all of you, our audience out there. Don't miss other Future Ready Live sessions. We'll be back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. See you then, and thank you, Joey.
Thank you, Tom.